What is going on, Patriots fans? Thank you so much for joining me today for the latest stream on Musket Fire. Today, we're going to talk about the Patriots taking on the Seattle Seahawks for the first time in 4 years, if you can believe it or not. Actually, it's been even longer since they've had them at Gillette Stadium, but we will talk about that in just a second. So, we're going into week 2 with a win, and I don't know that there was really anybody who predicted that. Actually, I think it's probably fair to assume that not a single person predicted that. I think if you look back at all of the predictions from the analysts, experts, and whatnot, nobody, not a single soul, picked the Patriots to win this game. I mean, most people don't pick them to win any games this year, if we're being honest. Most people have already decided that they are going to win maybe 3 games at most. I think if you get lucky, you might find someone who believes maybe 5. So the fact that they're starting off 1-0 is pretty fantastic. And they have a chance to go 2-0 against the Seahawks this weekend, which I think that is pretty exciting for people who are feeling pretty negative about how the 2024 season was going to go, especially the people that were disappointed about Jacoby Brissett being named to the starter and not Drake May. So, so before we get into that, I want to make sure I say hello to the people because, of course, Chris is here. Thank you so much. And he says, not even I would have predicted the Patriots to win week 1 on the road. Especially against, my favorite phrase, if you guys read musketfire.com, is perennial AFC favorite Super Bowl contenders in the Bengals. I know a lot of people are trying to take away from the Patriots winning because they want to say that it actually has more to do with the Bengals not playing well than the Patriots actually beating them, which I think, you can use that sometimes, but I think that we're just trying to take anything away from the Patriots doing what they did because people didn't anticipate that they could actually win a game, especially against a contender like the Bengals. So I'm not buying into it, okay? I'm going to be the optimistic one. I'm going to be excited that they beat the Bengals, and I'm not just going to attribute it to the Bengals playing horribly or something. I'm not doing it. We're not doing that today, okay? So let's get some updates on the injury reports because the teams actually both just dropped them right before I went live. So the Patriots have already, unsurprisingly, ruled out City So. I think everybody knew that was going to happen because he hasn't practiced all week. And I am not sure about the timeline of his injury. I don't think we really received a proper timeline for it. However, if they're going to be more cautious about whatever he's dealing with, then I'm for that. So far, it seems that he might still be the only one ruled out. Otherwise, people who are still questionable remains Kyle Duggar, JaMychal Hasty, Layden Robinson, and Dietrich Wise Jr. We'll have to pay attention to Wise and Duggar for sure. Robinson, too, because he's becoming a part of the offensive line with all the shuffling that they're doing with City So out. And then, of course, a core of 4 not doing what they wanted him to do. So definitely have to pay attention to that. The Seahawks they've ruled out a couple people. Pharaoh Brown, which is a former Patriot from last year, tight end Pharaoh Brown. He's already been ruled out. And so is Uchenna Nwosu. He will not be playing. He didn't play last week either, so that wasn't expected. However, the Patriots got a little bit of good news. I mean, good news if you're a fan of the Patriots. Definitely don't celebrate injuries, of course. That's not what I mean. But Kenneth Walker III, their star running back, is ruled as doubtful. So that is huge for the Patriots defense, especially because just like the Patriots did last week, the Seahawks saw their most success on the ground. So having to go to their backup, that is Zach Charbonnet, that is a downgrade. He's still a good running back, but definitely not Kenneth Walker. And they have already said right tackle George Fant is doubtful with a knee injury. So definitely a couple good things right there for the Patriots. I mean, good that they also only have one player ruled out on their side. So we'll have to pay attention to that and see what happens over the weekend. It's good that the Patriots do not have to travel, so that's a nice thing as well. But yeah, so let's see. Okay, Chris says the Bengals made mistakes, sure, but you have to credit the Patriots for making them make mistakes. Exactly. I think it becomes a thing this year. We're going to probably see this a lot, especially if the Patriots win some games, because if you look at the predictions for this game as well, what did I see? I think it was like on Boston.com. Out of all of the predictions that they had listed, only 2 analysts / writers picked the Patriots. Everybody else was picking the Seahawks. I saw another graphic that was on Twitter that showed everybody picking the Seahawks. And I think it's going to get to a point where they're going to want to discredit the Patriots because they're upset that they got the picks wrong. That is something that I think that they're going to do because they don't like to be wrong. So we'll have to see. Maybe they'll flip if the Patriots win a couple games. But I definitely don't see it changing when they go up against the Jets on Thursday Night Football. So despite the fact that the Jets looked like poo-poo last week. So we shall see. So I did write about this in case you guys want to see some more details about it on musketfire.com. But the Patriots are officially trolling the Seahawks. You know, they have the new lighthouse in the end zone, and every single week they now will have, every single home game rather, they will have a keeper of the light. So it is somebody who rings the bell and, welcomes everybody to the game. And it's like, that's the official start of the game. This week, given who is on the schedule, they are going to have Super Bowl hero, fan favorite, Patriot legend Malcolm Butler in the house to be keeper of the light. And the initial reaction, I think, from fans was, this is fantastic. What a great way to troll the Seahawks and to remind them of the face, the guy that brought them so much sadness back at Super Bowl 49. Also a great reminder to Patriots fans who love to reflect upon all of the success that they have seen over the last 20 years. Well, yeah, especially now that they're not reaping the same rewards. But I also am one of those people that gets a little superstitious, so I'm a little concerned. I'm wondering if anyone else is concerned because they have superstitious brains. Like, are they going to benefit from Malcolm Butler being in the building? What if it's bad juju? What if it comes back to haunt them? Regardless, though, I love this approach, and I kind of hope that they continue to do this for their home teams. Like, if there's anybody that they can kind of bring in that is relevant to whoever their opponent is that week. Obviously, it's not always going to be as big of a name like Malcolm Butler is for the Seahawks, but I do like that they're doing this, and I think it'll be fun if they keep that up because it's fun for the fans. Like, there are a lot of people who think that fans aren't really going to want to see the Patriots this year, and I guess we'll see what Gillette Stadium looks like on Sunday. But I think that adding a little bit more of something to look forward to, like Malcolm Butler or whoever else might be the keeper of the light that week, that might get some butts in seats. I mean, I know that it's not like the same, that it's going to be like Tom Brady bringing us to a Super Bowl, but I do think it's an added level that they can explore, and I think it would be kind of cool. But yeah, so let's get into the game now. Let's talk about the facts of the game first. I always find this to be so fascinating, especially for teams that they don't play that often. And the Seahawks are one of those teams that they don't play very often. So this is their first meeting, as I said at the beginning, at the top of the show. Their first meeting since they played Sunday Night Football in Seattle in November of 2020. The teams looked very different back then. Russell Wilson was still the Seahawks quarterback. Cam Newton was the Patriots quarterback. And was this in November of 2020? I don't think it was in November. It was in September. Wasn't it like the week 2 game or something? Who said this was in November? This definitely is September. And it was a shootout. I'm sure you guys probably remember. This is when the Patriots were actually looking pretty good, and They beat the Dolphins in week 1, and then I believe that's when they went to Seattle in week 2, and it was a crazy game. The Patriots were looking like they were going to actually be able to contend. Cam Newton was defying the odds that were put on him because people believed he was a washed-up quarterback, and that's why he wasn't with the Panthers anymore, and that the Patriots, were kind of hoping that they were going to get a little bit of what Cam Newton used to be as their quarterback, at least for the 2020 season. But he played a really good game. They did lose, obviously, 35-30, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. That is a game that I remember, especially the end with Cam trying to get into the end zone. So hopefully their fate will be a little bit different this time around. Yeah, see, I don't know. I read an article that said November, and I didn't think anything of it until I was just reflecting upon it. I'm like, no, Cam was not killing it in November. Yeah, I don't know. I maybe that must have been a typo or something. I don't know. Or maybe I got confused. I don't know. But I'm glad I caught myself because, I was like, wait a second, that's wrong. Anyway, so the last time that the Seahawks came to Gillette Stadium, maybe this is where I got mixed up. It was in November of 2016, which was also for Sunday Night Football. Another game that looked drastically different. Tom Brady was still there. Bill Belichick was still there. Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson was still there. And I think this was the first time that the Patriots faced the Seahawks since their Super Bowl win from Super Bowl 49. And unfortunately, the Seahawks won that game as well, 31-24. If I remember correctly, they injured Gronk in that game. I believe 2 guys went and hit him in the back and took him out. And that was like a big reason why they were able to dominate and get the win at the end of the night. Overall, the Patriots are 4-6 in home games versus Seattle. So, you can take that for what it is because obviously a lot of their meetings were at the height of when they were trying to both go for Super Bowls and whatnot. That's not the case right now. And so we'll see how that is. But the Patriots are looking to go 2-0 for the first time since 2019, which of course is the last year that we had Tom Brady. And so that would be pretty huge if they could do that. Doesn't matter if it's with Jacoby Brissett. It would be a great way for the Gerard Mayo era to begin. And I think that is a big focus that we need to keep in mind because we might not be thrilled that, it's not Drake May, but wanting the Gerard Mayo era to begin on a good note is crucial. So you can tell the attitude and the vibe within the locker room and on the sideline is just so different than it was a year ago. It's another piece that I talk about on musketfire.com. And so if you can keep that going, especially at the beginning of the year, because we know, and the players have already made it known, I think even Mayo has talked about it, they hear what everybody's saying. They know that there were people out there saying they wouldn't doubt, seeing them go 0-17. They know that nobody is picking them to win any game or that people are talking about how this offense is bad and blah, 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 blah. So if they can keep that going and keep having players buy in and then playing with a chip on their shoulder because of that, it's possible that we could see them stack up more wins than anybody anticipated. And that is fantastic. Not just for, the vibe and the attitude in the locker room, but it's going to go a long way for the future of the Gerard Mayo era, simply because, something that we've all talked about is, and even Mayo has spoken about it, is it's not going to be easy for them to be bringing in free agents because they are, there is a new coaching staff. There is going to be a young, unproven quarterback. Doesn't matter that they're going to have a ton of money over the next few years because before they did some re-signings and extensions, they were going to have close to 200 million, I believe, close to 200 million or something like that for 2025. So they're definitely going to be rolling in dough. So that won't be an issue. But if they can stack some wins and show that the players are buying in, that they are loving their head coach, it's inevitable that there are going to be guys that want to come here for that reason alone. It won't matter if they're not going to be a Super Bowl contender. That is something that people like to bring up. But how many players do you see take humongous contracts with teams that have not won a Super Bowl in like 20, 30, 40 years. You see it every single year. A lot of them just want to get paid, or they want to be in a fun environment with a great head coach and a great roster around them. So I think if we can keep seeing that happen, then that's great overall, not just for changing the atmosphere that has become toxic in New England over the last couple of years, but for what that could mean for the future. This is also going to be a potential game where if they can have a second turnover-free game, because we didn't see a single turnover by them against the Bengals last week, it will be the first time they have done that in back-to-back games since they did that with Mac Jones, surprisingly, in 2022 when they did it 3 games in a row. Obviously, that was something that became quite an issue last year. They've done a pretty good job about that so far, and I don't want to jinx it, but that would be another great accolade to have under their belt for Sunday's matchup. Let's get to the comments. I see, hi Nathaniel, I hope that we win on Sunday as well. Let's see. Chris says the only Seahawks Patriots game that matters was the Super Bowl win. 1,000%. And yeah, so we shall see. It's kind of cool when these matchups happen where we can reflect and have a positive reflection upon it. You know what I mean? Because when, they're talking about playing the Eagles or when the Patriots play the Giants, it's obvious that they're going to talk about some of the most heartbreaking losses in Super Bowl history. So it's nice when we can actually have a game where maybe they'll show some highlights from 49 and it's not going to be devastating and wanting to shield our eyes. But so we'll have to see about that. So let's go down to breaking down the rosters. So the Seahawks defense is going to be a big dictator of this matchup, much like the Patriots defense will be, but we'll get there in a second. So looking back on their week 1 matchup with the Broncos, who are in a similar situation to the Patriots where, they have Sean Payton, but I think this is his 2nd season. So not as new as Gerard Mayo, but they do have a rookie quarterback. They have Bo Nix, and he didn't do that great last week, and part of that was because of the Seahawks defense. They had 2 sacks on 49 dropbacks and forced him to scramble 5 times. They also had 6 tackles for a loss, 6 passes defended, and 8 quarterback hits. So they were all over Bo Nix last week. Some of that can be attributed to his inexperience in the NFL. Obviously, he's not going to be used to the veteran players in the NFL, much like, they play incredibly different than a college defense. But at the same time, the Seahawks do have one of the best defensive lines in the entire NFL. So that is likely going to be a problem on Sunday for the Patriots. They also registered 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery. So as we were just talking about, the Patriots would love to have another turnover free game. This Seahawks defense is going to be looking to create those opportunities for just like the Patriots defense is going to do. So definitely going to have to protect the football, and that needs to be a focus this week. And they also only allowed a single touchdown, which was a late game touchdown. You could almost argue that it was in garbage time. So although the end score was 22-26, they still were not letting them get into the end zone. They had to resort to field goals. So fortunately, if that were the case, which I hope it's not for the Patriots, we do have a solid kicker, it seems. I'm going to knock on wood because it makes me nervous to say those things out loud with Joey Sly, but let's hope that they can break their way into the end zone. So maybe we don't even want to talk about that. The Seahawks defense also only allowed 99 rushing yards and 138 receiving yards. So the run game is going to be a focus of the Patriots offense. As we know, new offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt is known for loving him some running backs. We saw it last week with Ramondre Stevenson, but this Seahawks defense is no fan of the run game. Granted, I believe that the Broncos got rid of their best running back last year And so they're kind of in the middle of trying to figure out who that is. So I think Ramondre Stevenson is definitely a different animal than what the Seahawks were dealing with last week. But it is definitely worthy of keeping in mind, because that might mean that the Patriots have to open up the passing game, especially when you have Leonard Williams and Boy Mafe in the lineup, because they are their biggest disruptors. They are going to come after you, and that will impact the passing game as well. But because they are on the defensive line, Ramondre Stevenson might have a lot more difficulty breaking through and getting positive yardage in this game. So we will have to pay attention to that. Just want to check and see if you guys are talking to me. Nope, you guys are talking to yours. Oh, interesting. What is my favorite Patriots Super Bowl? Super Bowl 51. I have tried to pick a different one, because, a lot of people pick that one. A lot of people pick Super Bowl 49, I think, also because it had been 10 years since the Patriots won a Super Bowl, and it was against a really good defense. And then, of course, the way that it came about, with Malcolm Butler's interception in the end zone. So that makes people love it. And I appreciate Super Bowl 49. I was emotional when the Patriots won, so I'm not taking anything away from that. But Super Bowl 51 has just like a special place in my heart. There's just something about it, just the way that they were able to come back and everybody ruled against them. There were people leaving and celebrating, and yet the Tom Brady, and I feel like that was just the epitome of what a Tom Brady, Bill Belichick Patriots team was. And I feel we saw that in this game. And I don't know, there's just something about Super Bowl 51 that I really enjoy the most. Let's look at the Patriots defense now that we looked at the Seahawks defense. Oh my goodness. And they had a good game against Joe Burrow and the Bengals last week. They got 3 sacks on Joe Burrow. 2.5 of them were by Keon White. I wrote about him a bunch this week if you want to check that out. Michael also got a piece up about Keon White today. Ironically, it is a conversation that was brought up by Rob Ninkovich, I think, on his podcast today, about the Patriots needing to lock down Keon White maybe this offseason and get him down in a contract as soon as possible, because if he continues to play the way that he played in week 1, which of course it's a small sample size because he wasn't that big of a disruptor last season, but he looks like he's on path to be that Matthew Judon replacement that the defensive line desperately needed. Ninkovich and I think Michael also was talking about how it would be better to lock him up now, get him cheaper than whatever a great season might be that would warrant a bigger contract. Lock him up now before he becomes too big of a star. So that is also on musketfire.com if you like to check that out. And the Patriots defense also got 3 tackles for a loss, 3 passes defended, and 4 quarterback hits. They had 2 fumble recoveries as well. I believe that includes the special teams, though. So special teams is going to be a huge part of this game. Thank goodness they are getting back to that traditional special teams that we had grown to know and love in New England. It was so nice to finally not have to worry about that unit on Sunday, and I hope that is something that remains throughout the rest of the season. It would be great if, in general, we didn't have to hold our breath anytime any special teamer was on the field. So the Patriots defense also allowed just 165 receiving yards and only 70 yards on the ground. One of the touchdowns was to Zach Moss. So this feels like it was going to be a battle of the run game between both of these teams. That might not be the case now for Seattle, because as I said earlier, when we were talking about the injury reports, Kenneth Walker is likely not going to play. So they're going to have to rely on Zach Charbonnet, who, as I said, is a good running back, and he has had some pretty good games. If you look last season, he had to step in for Walker a few times as well, and he had some standout games. So definitely not a guy to completely disregard. He's not as explosive as Walker, but that doesn't mean that he can't get the job done. So it's going to be interesting to see if that means that we're going to see more receivers in this game, which could be the case for the Patriots as well because of their defensive line. We'll have to see. Moving on to the offense. So the Seahawks offense is going to look a little bit different, as I've alluded to already. Last week, the Kenneth Walker had 20 carries for 103 yards and a touchdown. It was averaging 5.2 yards per carry. Very similar to what Ramondre Stevenson did last week. That's going to be drastically different for them this week if Walker is not on the field. So we'll definitely have to keep a close eye on that over the next, less than 48 hours? Yeah, way less than 48 hours. Actually, I just saw what time it was. Geno Smith last week against the Broncos went 18 for 25, 171 yards, a touchdown and an interception, and he was also sacked for negative 13 yards. I would anticipate that the Patriots defense is going to get to Geno Smith probably a little bit more. We know that he is a running quarterback, which is the current trendy thing for quarterbacks in the NFL. But Joe Burrow is that guy that likes to scramble and get extra yardage with his legs as well. And they got him 3 times last week. So I would expect for Keon White to be all up on Geno Smith, especially with their right tackle out. Tyler Lockett was 6 of 7 for 77 yards. He's also been on the injury report this week, so I would say we got to pay attention to that on the injury report as well, because if he's not on the field, he's a secret weapon. He's been in the league for 10 years or more at this point. I don't even know. Time flies by so fast, but he's always been a secret weapon for the Seahawks, and people kind of forget about him because you focus on the other guys. In this case, it's DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba, but Tyler Lockett is going to sneak by and get the job done, and you're never going to even notice. He's just going to fly by you because he's small, he's fast, he's accurate. He is a quarterback's best friend in Seattle, so we definitely need to see, if he's out too, that Patriots defense might eat on Sunday. Zach Charbonnet is the only player who got a touchdown. It was actually a receiving touchdown on Sunday. So again, as I said, Kenneth Walker might not play, but Zach Charbonnet is not a guy to disregard. He's the only one who got into the end zone last week. So expect that to be the case this week as well. He's going to be running, and he's also active in the receiving game. So we can't just say, oh, they're going to forfeit the run game. They're not really going to go with that. No, they've got weapons on offense. And then they also, Jerome Baker lost a fumble. So that is another thing. We know that the Patriots want to try to create more opportunities for their offense, and don't expect them to lay off of that. You're going to probably see a lot of them trying to punch out the football. Special teams is probably going to keep trying to force those turnovers as well, because they had such good luck with that last week. And obviously we see that the Seahawks were struggling to keep the football. So we'll have to pay attention to that as well. Chris says, I put Ramondre in my fantasy lineup this week after nearly losing my week 1 matchup. Yeah, I'm not playing fantasy football this year, and people think I'm absolutely crazy, but I just have so much going on. This is my first season in the editor role for Musket Fire, so it's a lot of new stuff that I need to get done, and I just wanted to make sure that I was focusing on my job and doing the best that I can for the website. So plus I have my own YouTube channel to talk about wrestling and stuff. So it's just a lot. So I'm not playing fantasy football this year, but my sister is, and she had Christian McCaffrey in her lineup and didn't know that he wasn't going to play. And unfortunately she had to keep him in her lineup, and she only lost by 10 points. So it's painful. I hate when that happens, especially when you got a guy as good as McCaffrey on your team, and then you have to wait until Monday night for them to release the injury report. It just reminds me, I'm thankful that I'm not playing this year, because I would be a mess. I would be so upset if that happened to me. All right, now let's get to the Patriots offense, which to most people is not that exciting. However, I think it is. I think it has the potential to be exciting. As Chris already alluded to, Ramondre Stevenson had a big week last week. He had 25 carries for 120 yards. 118 of them were after contact, and he got a touchdown. Now, this was only, I think, the fourth game in Stevenson's career that he broke 100 yards on the ground. If this is any indication of what Alex Van Pelt is going to be bringing to the run game as the Patriots offensive coordinator, I am excited. I know, again, it's a small sample size, but if this is the type of performance that we're going to see from Ramondre Stevenson, potentially on a weekly basis, I am excited because I agree with Mayo saying that Stevenson is kind of one of the more underrated running backs in the league, and he's not viewed among the top players across the NFL. And I'm not trying to say, he's better than Nick Chubb or Saquon Barkley or whoever. Like, I don't mean that. However, I do think that he's underrated. He's been a solid player since the Patriots drafted him. I mean, he booted Damian Harris in his rookie season, basically, and has just evolved and developed into such a great weapon, dual threat weapon for the Patriots. Because if you guys remember, he used to not be involved in the passing game at all. That was not a part of his skill set, but he worked on that to implement it into his skill set and open that possibility for him to be used in different ways on offense. And he's not looked back. It's been a huge factor, great factor for the offense, and it's going to continue to be that way. But if he can keep doing these kind of numbers on the ground, ooh, baby, that is very exciting. I do think we're gonna have to pay attention to what goes on with the passing game because it was not a passing game against the Bengals. I don't think that that's going to remain the case as the season goes on. As much as Alex Van Pelt wanted to sell us that they're going to be a run-first team, he did kind of take that back a bit this week, saying that they're going to adjust the game plan every single week depending on who they're playing. Obviously, if they're playing a team that is weak against the run, they're going to hammer home the ground game, and if they're a defense that is bad against the passing game, then they're going to lean on that. And I think that that's why we need to see a little bit more of Demario Douglas and Jalen Polk. Starting this week, I would love to see them both. They're explosive players. We know the type of player that Demario Douglas is. It's the reason why he was the leading receiver on the team last year. Jalen Polk, also, he's a rookie, but he looked fantastic throughout the summer and in preseason, and he was open a ton last week. So I assume that we're going to see that open up a little bit more. At least I hope so, because, we can't all, as great as it is to see Ramondre Stevenson doing as well as he is, we also don't want him to be run into the ground because he's being used so much. You don't want to risk that injury. You don't want to tire him out. You don't want to do that, especially at the beginning of the season. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more from those guys. And then I also want to see more of the tight ends. So Henry was basically a non-factor last week. Austin Hooper was being used more in a blocking role, which is great because obviously they haven't had that really from their secondary tight ends with Mike Gesicki and Jonnu Smith over the last couple of years. But I want to see them more in the game, especially Hunter Henry. We know the type of tight ends that he can be. I mean, he's had a couple years ago, he had the best season of his career when he was with the Patriots. So definitely no reason for him to be more sidelined than anything else. So, hopefully we'll see that. I'm not sure if that's going to be a part of the game plan, but it also feels kind of silly to sign a veteran guy like Austin Hooper and then not really utilize him. He's not the best blocker either, so it's kind of odd that they're not doing that, but we'll see. We shall see. And yes, I am a very busy lady. I wish there were more hours in a day. I am now one of those people that wishes there were more hours in a day instead of wishing that I could go to bed at 8 p.m. Some days I do feel like I could go to bed at 8 p.m. Other times I wish that there was like another 3 hours in the day. Maine says, establish the run so you can pass. Yes. So I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to probably test the run game early and see how well they can do against this defensive line, because they are such a monster. And if they can kind of get that going, then we'll see the pass game open up. I'm hoping anyway. Chris says, I also hope we get to see more of the wide receivers for the Patriots this week. Yeah, I think, Douglas is so exciting to watch. I mean, he is small, but he looked like he could be a top receiver on this team. And of course, so did Jalen Polk. He came alive as the summer went on. And the fact that he was so open, I think he was the top receiver in the entire league last week who gained the most separation, which for a rookie is incredible. Also, something that the Patriots have been lacking with their receivers over the last few years. Like, let's not even talk about Devontae Parker, okay? So the fact that they kind of overlooked that last week, it's like, all right, we can do that 1 week, but that cannot become the norm. We need to start getting him involved, because there's a reason why you spent your second round pick on him, and hopefully they'll use him sooner rather than later. Alrighty, let's move on to a couple of the key matchups. I only picked a couple because there's a few here, but I do think that the main ones are going to be Christian Gonzalez versus DK Metcalf. We saw Gonzo hold Jamar Chase to just 3 receptions for 14 yards. I think he ended the game with 6 receptions for 60 yards. But Gonzo was on him for just those 3. So it's inevitable that he's going to be on DK Metcalf. I would not be surprised if he's also going to be put on potentially Jackson Smith-Njigba, because they are trying to involve him some more. He's also very familiar with Jake Bobo, this is another piece that I got up about Jake Bobo and Christian Gonzalez on musketfire.com. Because they played each other in college, and he struggled a bit with locking down Bobo. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to maybe, expose that and see if Gonzo can lock him down a little bit better now that he's in the NFL. I don't know. We shall see. But he's definitely on pace to keep up with what he did last year in the first 3.5 games, when he completely shut down A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. There were concerns about him from some reporters and analysts over the summer, thinking that maybe Gonzo was going to be not as big of a threat as they thought he was going to be in his second year. It's 1 game, so we're talking about just what we've seen in 1 game, but it does not look like that's going to be an issue whatsoever. And he has another opportunity to prove that again against a guy like Metcalf, who is much bigger than most of the guys that he has faced already. So that might be a little bit of a challenge, but I think most of us have faith in Gonzo, replicating what he's already done. So I think that will definitely be a fun matchup to watch. And the other one is going to be, which I think I've kind of beaten this to death, but it is what it is. We're going to see the Patriots offensive line versus the Seahawks defensive line. It's the weakest unit versus their strongest unit. So as I said, Seattle's defensive line is one of the best in the entire league, and they showed that again last week against the Broncos, not allowing Bo Nix to really do anything, nor their run game. So that will be a point of emphasis for them, especially knowing that the Patriots are going to want to rely on guys like Ramondre Stevenson. They're going to probably attack that left side because they know that is the weaker part of the offensive line. It's also the side that Ramondre Stevenson was avoiding because it's so bad. So if they want to try to exploit a weakness and get to the quarterback, especially if the Patriots are going to try to start involving the passing game, then they're definitely going to go after that left side. They also might just want to attack that right side because, hey, if we can get through them, then that's shutting down their run game. So we're going to have to pay attention to everything, unfortunately. We're going to need some really good games from Vidarian Lowe and Michael Jordan to keep that passing game and running game hopefully going, because they got to do something, Lowe is going to be handling Mafe, which is a little bit scary. Doesn't make me feel too confident. Mafe is like such a great player, and he's becoming a face of their defensive line at this point. It's the same thing with Layden Robinson. He might have a tough day going against Leonard Williams. It's kind of a mismatch there, and unfortunately, Layden Robinson is a rookie, and he's going to have to go up against a guy like Leonard Williams, but I think it's a pretty good test. He has Mike Onwenu right next to him. Lowe, on the other hand, is going to have Michael Jordan next to him, but they did a decent enough job last week that I'm hopeful that they can kind of try to keep it locked down as much as possible. And if it doesn't start off well, I'd like to think that they can make some adjustments to fix that throughout the game so that it is not a game that we want to watch through our fingers. You know what I mean? Like anytime that the offense is on the field. So with Layden, though, I think there's a lot more, other than the fact that he's going to be lined up obviously next to Mike Onwenu, that makes you feel a little bit better. He has received so much praise from the coaches and from his teammates recently, and we've heard the same from Caden Wallace, who for some reason isn't really getting any starting reps, which I don't really understand, but it is what it is. Layden has been doing great. I mean, David Andrews has even raved about how smart of a player he is, how much he's worked, and whatnot. So I'm expecting that he's only going to get better and better every single week. And maybe this will be a good early matchup for him because he will be going against one of the best ones in the league. And that can kind of be like a good test for him early on. Hopefully that's the take that we can have instead of regretting that he had to deal with a guy like Leonard Williams early. But, you know, sometimes it is a good thing to go against the best early on because it just gets you prepared for everybody else. Then the last little bit that I wanted to talk about today is just a couple biggest questions going into this game. I think I'm going to do this every single week. Had a lot more questions going into the week 1 game against the Bengals, but a lot of it was kind of answered because obviously there hadn't been any games yet. We didn't have anything to look at. We had no knowledge to reflect upon. Now we do. So I think one of the biggest questions is, can the offensive line keep up their performance from last week? They allowed just 4 hits on Jacoby Brissett. There were no sacks allowed. And obviously they're going to be going against a much better defensive line this week. But if they can just keep Jacoby upright and hopefully try to just avoid some of those hits, because even though it was only 4 hits, some of those were pretty hard. And we saw what happened with Jacoby in the preseason where he got hit hard and then he didn't come back into the game. Don't want to see that happen. And I think the offensive line has been the most worrisome unit of the entire team. So if they can get to a point where, you know, they're being consistent, like they're not being perfect, maybe they allow a sack or they maybe allow too many hits in our mind, as long as they are able to not be a liability or let the deficiencies of the offensive line be the defining factor of how a game goes, then I think that is a win for everybody. It would be nice to not have to sit there and be worried about what they're going to do and if they're going to do it enough. And hopefully they can figure out a lineup that works. I know that City So being sidelined is obviously not a great thing, but they came into the season not knowing what the best group was going to be. And if they can keep what they're doing right now, then that will be great for the rest of the season. It'll be one less thing that they have to worry about. And as I alluded to earlier, my only other question really is are we going to see more of the passing game? Are we going to see Polk more included in this week? What about Demario Douglas? As I said, they were open a lot on tape, so there were definitely opportunities to involve them early and often, and it just didn't happen. So I am hoping that we will see that, and I think that would be exciting for fans to see, especially for Polk, because he might not be that receiver that people were wanting. Obviously, there were people who wanted them to trade back in to the first round and get somebody, or they were hoping that they got, Xavier Worthy or somebody like that. And they didn't. They got Jalen Polk. So if we could see some of that explosiveness in a real game from him in week 2, I think that would be, it would help the optimism, with the Patriots and the offense and in the direction that they're going. You would see that there is good development coming, that they did choose the right guys in the draft, because the reactions to their 2024 draft class were very high. Jalen Polk was one of them that got people the most excited. So if we can see that kind of pay off early, it would be pretty fantastic, I would say. So that is all I have for you guys today. I see Nathaniel says, Sarah, how do you feel about Kraft not getting into the Hall of Fame? I think it's honestly kind of ridiculous. I wrote about this also on musketfire.com if you guys want to read it. I understand why he would be frustrated about not getting in before somebody like Jerry Jones, because he has done so much more for the Patriots. And I think that, you know, the new thing now is that he doesn't expect to get into the Hall of Fame at this point, because if they didn't put him in already, then he's probably not going in, or they're going to wait like another 20 years before they put him in, which is ridiculous. I feel like when you're talking about influential owners and franchises, the Patriots are on the front page of that. And so it seems a little bit ridiculous that they're going to be trying to cite things like Spygate and Deflategate as reasons why they're not putting Kraft in the Hall of Fame. That's ridiculous. Especially if you really look at what Spygate was. Like, come on, bro. Come on. And when you actually know what Deflategate was, really, you know, I think they're just being petty. That's what they're doing. Chris makes his prediction. He says, I am going for a home win, Pats 20, Seahawks 17. I would love that. I like your optimism. I'm so bad at picking winners and making score predictions, so I tend to not get involved in that. However, I could definitely see the Patriots taking home a win this week. Some of it is going to be attributed to the injuries that are the Seahawks are going to be dealing with, and the players that are going to be out. But I think that the Patriots did a far better job last week than anyone imagined. And if they can keep doing that and then build upon that and actually do more, like we said, with the passing game, then there's no reason why they couldn't beat a Seahawks team. They might even be able to beat a Jets team, if we're being honest. I mean, they looked pretty terrible against, yes, a very formidable opponent in the 49ers, but the Patriots have a great defense. So I think if they can just build upon what we saw last week, then the chances of them adding more wins this season are much higher than anyone anticipated. So hopefully you are right, Chris. And I appreciate you guys being here. Everybody who's watching, whether you've commented or not, thank you so much for being here. I should be going live after the game, probably within an hour or two, because obviously I have a job to do. So I need to get some pieces up after the game. So I will be creating a live stream for the channel, and it'll probably be a tentative time. So if you do want to hop in and chat after the game so we can talk about the win or the loss, pay attention to that on Musket Fire's YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. Share the love. Check out the website. Read those articles. All of us put in a lot of hard work every day for you guys to write about the news and our opinions and kind of do it from a fan's perspective. So all the support is greatly appreciated. Follow us on social media. That is going to be in the description box. And I will see you guys on Sunday. Go Pats. Bye, guys.